Welcome to the Regular People Podcast. This is Wade Allen, and joining me today is Emma.
Hello.
So I think we'll be talking about a variety of topics today, including abortion, fast fashion, maybe a little bit of atheism, maybe some veganism as well. But first, tell me some stuff about you.
Oh, geez. Okay.
Maybe past 5 years or something along those lines.
Well, I just started college, so not a lot in the professional world that I can say
Yeah,
for the
that's
last
fine.
5 years. But as far as my personal life goes, I've developed from being extremely Christian and conservative to becoming quite the opposite. And it has greatly influenced what I'm doing in college now. So I'm majoring in environmental science and political science. And I'm hoping to maybe go into some sort of conservation field or maybe even continue on to law school to do environmental law because,
That'd be cool.
yeah, I think it's a good pairing with the poli-sci minor.
Yeah.
But yeah, not very much yet. I'm just starting college, but I'm working at a vegan restaurant right now trying to save up and pay off college out of pocket. So that's kind of nice.
Out of pocket, really?
Yeah, I'm paying it monthly and I pay about $1,200 a month. And I just work at Target during the summer, and I'm managing it so far. So we'll see how.
Did you apply for any grants or anything like that?
I got a scholarship to go to Carroll, so I got. I can't remember how much it is, but I pay $7,000 a semester. So.
Wow.
Yeah. So I don't know. I applied for a couple out of not affiliated with my school scholarships, and I didn't get them. So.
Okay. I don't know. Maybe it changes depending on what kind of college you're going to, but because right now I haven't had to pay for my college yet.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely cheaper college.
Yeah.
Than $7,000 a semester. But what is it called? I always forget. It's the FAFSA.
Oh yeah.
Did you fill that out?
Yeah, I got some FAFSA, so that also contributes to it too. But I still
you got that,
yeah,
and it's
I'm still paying
$7,000.
$7,000. Yeah, but my parents don't.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, so I'm actually I'm gonna have 2,000 left over from this semester, so I'm saving up pretty good.
Wow.
Yeah. Nice.
Okay, so I don't know if this question is too personal or anything like that, but is it that your parents refuse to pay for you, or is it just that they can't? Because I would understand that.
A little bit of both. I don't think that they would if they could afford it, but they can't anyways. So
yeah, college is freaking expensive these days.
Yeah.
So.
Well, my sister went to Madison, so has a lot of loan. I wanted to go to Madison, but that's significantly more expensive than what I'm paying now. So
yeah, is she paying that for on her own?
She took out loans, I think, but she's paying those on her own. Yeah, and I'm trying to graduate in 3 years, so it'll be a little bit less expensive.
So you haven't taken out any loans
besides the FAFSA one that the government one, but
because it's a FAFSA grant and a FAFSA loan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but other than the FAFSA, no, not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. We'll see.
And you said you just started college, so this is your second semester?
Yeah.
Okay. So what classes did you take last semester?
Well, I took an English class, which sounds boring, but it was actually really interesting. We wrote 5 different essays, and we could write about anything we wanted as long as they were fitting the topic. So we did a wealth essay, an ethics essay, a gender or sociology essay, and then I can't remember the other ones. But it was basically just sociology, but focused on writing skills. So that was really interesting. And then I took another sociology class about politics. So Carol makes every freshman take a sociology class and you get to pick the topic. And I picked, it's this politics one, and it's basically examining the divide between the left and the right in the United States and why it's so hostile. So that was an interesting politics class. And then just an earth science for my major and bio. And then I'm currently taking philosophy, which I enjoy. And then another climate science class, a stats class, and an art class, which is the one fun class I get to
Wait,
take.
all those classes were last semester?
No, that's the class for this semester.
Okay. Yeah, I took a sociology class last semester, but I only had to write 1 essay for it. So I don't know if I'd want one where you have to write 5 essays.
I like writing papers.
You do?
Yeah, I quite enjoy it, which is, I don't know why I'm a science major, but yeah, I don't like math or doing labs at all, but I would much prefer to be a humanities major, but I don't think
there's an environmental science for humanities.
I don't know. I feel like environmental science is probably one of the easier STEM majors.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's not as bad, but I definitely don't enjoy it as much as I would a humanities major. I was contemplating like a women's and gender studies major, but there's not a lot of jobs in that, so I've heard, and I don't think my parents would have approved. But I did get to like do a little bit with that interest because I wrote my term paper for English on motherhood and how it is an unwritten requirement of womanhood and how it's destructive to women, kind of how motherhood is pushed on women and it's like significantly more detrimental to be a parent on women's physical and mental and social health than it is for men to be fathers.
Oh, okay.
It was a pretty interesting paper. I got to do a lot of different like research on it. I don't know. It's something that I'm super passionate about is motherhood being a choice rather than a requirement.
Right.
And a lot of women don't realize that it's more of a choice than a requirement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What were your sources that you used?
There was a study done. A lot of them were on happiness of women in different countries and how they reported different areas of their life, happiness in their career, happiness in their marriage, happiness in their sex life, happiness in their view of self, and how it decreased significantly after having children and after each child that was
It decreases after each child?
After every child, yeah.
That's great.
And
are there any books on the subject that you've read? Or that
not
you know
that
about?
I've read, but I've been wanting to. I've just actually bought The Feminist Mystique by Betty Friedman, and I want to read that. But for the research paper, I didn't do any books for my source because I figured reading articles was a lot easier to get done in a short time
Yes, that's true.
than books. But yeah, I don't do a lot of free reading because of school, but I've been wanting to this summer. I actually just bought that book, and then my boyfriend's dad lent me A Preface to Morals, which doesn't have an author, I don't believe.
What?
But it's really, I
Like
think,
anonymous?
yeah, but it's really old. It doesn't have a cover either, so I'm excited to read it. It sounds like
It doesn't have a cover. It's just a pamphlet.
it's just, well, it's a coverless book. I think he read it so many times that it broke. But
Gotcha.
yeah, I've been wanting to get more into philosophy and just reading about it on my free time, not doing anything with it for school. But
yeah,
after reading A Preface to Morals and then taking just a elective philosophy class, it's actually like super interesting.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of philosophy.
Yeah. So I've heard.
Yeah. You were talking about college, and I was asking about if your parents would pay for it, but why wouldn't they?
They are very pull yourself up by your bootstraps. So.
Oh, okay. So
yeah,
it's not
so
like they
it's not
disagree
like
with what you're going for.
Yeah,
It's just...
no, my dad knows that there are jobs in environmental science, so he's not worried about the major. It's just that he thinks that college is something that I would appreciate paying for by myself because because it would teach me. I mean, it's kind of taught me a little bit of responsibility. I'm like proud of myself for being able to pay for it on my own, but I don't know, it would be nice to have a little bit of parental help. But
yeah, I mean, yeah, my parents aren't paying for my college either, but I haven't asked them to, and I wouldn't expect them to.
Yeah.
Either.
It's my choice to go and get a higher education. So.
Yeah. So you said you used to be Christian and conservative.
Yes, I used to be extremely Christian and conservative. I would actually get into fights with atheists on the internet.
How long ago was that?
I think in like 5th and 6th grade. Oh, well, I also was going through quite the denial stage. So once I started having, doubts about Christianity, I started being even more aggressive with it. Like, oh, I'm like super passionate about this, but like, so I used to go to religion class twice a week, and I remember I used to ask a lot of questions like about things not adding up in the Bible and things not like.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was kind of asking those
You're like
questions.
the inquisitive kid.
Yeah, and I was sent to a counseling session with one of the pastors, and he was very understanding. He was like, "Oh, it's so normal to have doubts about Christianity and all that stuff," but he made me read a lot of passages from Revelations and about the end of the, coming of Christ and how it was very like, oh, it's normal to doubt, but at the same time, you're still going to go to hell if you don't. And it was very...
It's like trying to make you afraid.
Make me guilty for doubting and that sort of thing. So I went through a period of time where I was very aggressive with Christianity because I was scared that God would know that I was doubting. And so, I would...
I mean, he would know if you exist.
And it was to the point I remember praying every night, please don't sell me to hell. I still believe in you. There was a period in my life where I was very conflicted and obsessed with Christianity to the point where I would seek out arguments with atheists to defend it. And yeah, I would just kind of like preoccupy myself with reading the Bible and all that.
Wow. How did that transition into not believing
well,
anymore happen?
my older sister and I actually both were kind of talking about it, and I think as I met or started talking to my peers more about it, and I had a lot of friends who weren't Christian, and I started watching a lot of YouTube videos on atheism, started doing a lot of like outside research, and then I also got confirmed in 7th grade, so I didn't have to go to religion class anymore, so I wasn't really subjected to the constant religion class, like reading the Bible and that sort of thing.
So you're only going to the classes until you got confirmed?
Yeah, which they discourage. They like tell us like, oh, you should keep coming to, like, they had like youth classes and stuff, but everybody just like stops going after they got confirmed.
And your parents didn't care?
Did
they want you to be
They did
Christian
it for a while, but I think it was around my freshman year of high school when my dad had overheard me talking with one of my friends about, I don't know what we were talking about. I think we were talking about Hinduism and how like we could see, you know, that sort of thing. And he overheard that, and then he started forcing me to go to church twice a week, or else I would walk to school. So yeah, so then I went to church like a few times a month until I could drive myself, and then I would say I was going on Wednesday nights, and then I would just go do homework.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
So
your parents should still be probably pretty proud of that. Like, they want you to go to church group, but instead you're doing homework.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
it's not like you're out smoking weed behind the dumpsters.
Not in high school.
So. Now, I mean, different story. So, you're like a 6th grader online picking fights with atheists. Was the watching atheist YouTube videos, was that initially like because you wanted to like defend the like theistic views, or
a little bit, but I also just was really, I was really curious about it after, especially after
different viewpoints,
especially after arguing with atheists, and like I remember my friend and I would like tag team it, and like we were in 6th grade, so we would obviously not be making very good arguments, and like after a while I was like, wait a minute, this kind of makes sense, and then that coupled with doing more research online and like joining some atheist subreddits and like YouTube video channels and subscribing. Yeah, I think it was about like high school when I stopped like being super Christian and conservative. Like,
do those go hand in hand? Yeah.
Yeah. So I remember I used to be extremely pro-life too. I would like get into arguments with pro-choice people on the internet and that sort of thing. Kind of did a 180. I get partially through just like taking more classes in high school too, like sociology classes, and like I took a U.S. history class and learned a little bit more about viewpoints that weren't my parents as far as politics goes. Yeah. It was pretty much, I was just in that conservative Christian bubble, and parents always say, oh, school makes you liberal, college makes you liberal, but it was really, I was just learning anything else that wasn't that conservative Christian opinion. It's just, they're not indoctrinating you to become liberal, they're just exposing you to other viewpoints and worldviews.
Right. It's not that like college is brainwashing you, it's that you've been brainwashed in your life up to that point.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're just exposed to different ideas, and you realize that ideas your parents wanted you to believe aren't good ones.
Yeah.
And then you happen to find better ones.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Did you go through something similar, or?
Yeah. I don't know if it was like as drastic or anything. I don't know if I ever really believed in God. I definitely went to church a lot.
Yeah.
Went to like the youth groups at night and stuff, and would go to like these summer camps that were all about praying and stuff. And I never like had any sort of experience of what other people claimed to have, of like talking to God or like having an actual like, I don't know, spiritual experience during prayer or anything.
Yeah.
I would be just like sitting there during the summer camp, would be like praying for an hour or whatever, and then I'd just be like, is something supposed to be happening right now? Like, I don't know, what am I doing? This seems like a waste of time. But I think I maybe like kind of believed a little bit, enough to feel guilty about things.
Yeah.
Enough to have that like fear of hell or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was definitely a transition, definitely by late high school. I was like, did not believe anymore. But growing up, I would think that evolution was not true.
Yeah, I remember arguing with my science teacher in 5th grade about when he was teaching me evolution. I was like, this is fake.
Yeah, because it was always like microevolution, that's a thing. But macroevolution, no, that's a lie that they're trying to tell you. And then for some reason that sounded good because I was a stupid kid who didn't know anything.
Yeah.
Definitely around maybe junior, senior year of high school, like a lot of my ideas were changing about that kind of thing.
Going back to those summer camps though, because I went to those every single summer too, Christian summer camp, and like it was fun, the part where you got to be outside,
right.
But
half of it was really fun.
Yeah, but they would like when everyone's like crying and praying, and it's like they like kind of emotionally like break down these kids like talking about like, oh, like what is something you've done wrong? Like we would go around in circles and be like, why do you think God wouldn't love you? And we'd have to share something about ourselves that like God wouldn't love, and then they'd tell you that he forgives you and stuff. But it's like they're emotionally making you feel guilty for all these things, and then it's like at the end of the week, it's like everyone is like told, oh, you know, we're all singing and praying and God loves all of us, but you just feel so horrible about everything that you've done. And they're like, when all these kids like feel so guilty, they're just like, oh, you're just feeling the Holy Spirit, you're just feeling God. And it was like, it started to feel really icky because I stopped going in 9th grade and I just felt really icky the whole week there.
Maybe the tactic is like to make kids go through trauma or like imagine trauma, even if the things that they've done in their life, because you're like a 9-year-old, like what have you really done wrong, like to make you feel like you've done awful stuff. And with this big group of other kids who are doing the same thing, because whenever you experience like trauma with people who have also gone through that same exact experience, kind of like makes you have a bond, I guess. If you and a different person both witness a murder, like you and that person are probably pretty close now or something like that. So maybe it's trying to like really force that bond between this large group of kids who are all being manipulated into thinking that God exists, so that they like depend upon each other and they all think that God exists. So they're going to continue thinking that because that's like your bubble. That's like group of friends. Yeah. I always hated the singing. Going to church, that I didn't ever want to go to church. Yeah. So that was probably one of the reasons too, because I don't understand those kids who would wholeheartedly believe in God and be excited about going to church, or it was like a high point in their week. Yeah. It was always like I was dreading it. I would like to go to church for the donuts. Yeah. And free donuts and coffee after. Yeah. I was like, okay, I'm gonna get some pretty bomb ass donuts, and then I'm gonna have to sing, and then I'm gonna get some grape juice, and then I'm gonna sing some more, and like I'm gonna hear some really fucked up sermons about how gay sex is immoral.
Talk about that in your sermons?
Yeah.
Dang.
There was like 2 different sections where we would go in my church as a kid. There was like the kids area, and that was more fun. Like it was like me and a couple of people my age or like grade, I guess. And there's like 1 or 2 instructors, and we would have like child-oriented stories, and it'd be more like, I don't know, playful and more like a school experience where you're actually working on things and projects and whatnot. Or there's like, you know, the mass with all the adults in the big room, and half the time I'd go there. I don't know. That was like, they're not really holding back there. They're telling some crazy stories in that one. So whenever I went to the giant group of all the adults, that was worse for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I would go to 8 a.m. We didn't call it mass because
we didn't call it mass either. But I mean, I don't know what else to call it.
The church service.
Yeah, church service.
I go to that 8 to 9, and then I go to Sunday school 9 to 10. So it was like a 2-hour ordeal every Sunday, and then I would go to religion class every Wednesday night as well.
Yeah, there was this thing I would go to called, I think it was called Boys Club, something like that. And that was like every Wednesday night, and it was a group of boys, and they'd split you up into rough age brackets. And yeah, it was kind of fun because you would start off first 30 minutes, you'd be there for like 2 hours on a Wednesday night or whatever. First 30 minutes, you're like playing sports or something. Yeah. Like basketball or some weird dodgeball variant or some game they make up. And then we like, I don't know, buy some sodas, eat some candy, and then we go like talk about the Bible for a little while. Yeah. And then there was always this period where there was this huge church, because I would go to a different church for this like nighttime youth group. It was some gigantic church in my area, and it was like a maze, that's the right word, where you could go explore like all these attics and like underneath the stage in the amphitheater, and we'd like find these hidden places. So I don't know, it's like with every church experience, there's always like some part that it was like, in my mind, I was like, you know, it's worth going for this reason. And then all the other bad stuff was like, that I had to deal with. Yeah. That's what they wanted me to go for. They wanted me to believe in like the story of Job. They wanted me to think that was a good example that I should live my life by, just suffer for God. Yeah. Yeah, it was stories like that. I think what you were saying with like asking a lot of questions to people, I would do that too, especially more in high school. in middle school. We'd go to like the youth group and we'd be talking about some concept and we'd be like writing in our little journals. And a lot of the time I would just be writing short stories, unrelated. And then I would be like asking these questions that they probably didn't want me to be asking.
Yeah.
Like, if you get married, your wife dies, you get remarried, you go to heaven, which wife are you with in heaven? And then they've got to say something like, well, technically neither, because it's not about your family, it's about God.
Yeah.
And then be like, what? So like,
why do I even want to go there if
I
I
know.
can't even see my family?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
No, I remember it was really terrible. Actually, this one kid, his older sister had committed suicide, and he had asked if he would ever see her again, and they told him no.
She definitely went to hell.
Because people who commit suicide go to hell, and I think we were in 4th grade when that happened, and
Yeah.
I just remember her saying that to everyone in front of this kid whose sister had just died, and I was like, why would you say that in front of him? And it was just like, they really...
Yeah.
I don't know. It just like really bothered me.
I really hope that kid is an atheist, because how do you hear something like that and want to be part of that group?
I mean, about like all the making you feel guilty for things you've done as a kid. I remember my parents have made me watch Passion of the Christ every single year on Good Friday since I was 8. And I remember the first time watching it, that scene where Jesus is getting like, beat up prior to his crucifixion. And I was crying. I was like, why are they doing that to him? And my dad said it's because of you, because of all your sins. And this is what he died for. So you should feel guilty. You should be crying right now. And I was so young when I started like watching those movies and like being told that like I was the reason Jesus died. And like then it's all Easter 2 days later and it's like all happy. And like the whole point is like you're forgiven, but it's still like that incessant guilt that you're forced to feel. Yeah,
the whole original sin thing and just making you feel guilty for existing.
Mm-hmm. You're born with sin.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, despite your own actions, you're a sinner. Like, no matter what. It seems like, I don't know, almost inherently ridiculous. Like,
yeah.
It doesn't make any sense that a fresh baby born into the universe should be blamed of any sin because of something that supposedly the first guy ever did.
Yeah.
And now it's tainted down in his seed throughout all of time.
Yeah.
And there's also this whole thing with how Jesus, they didn't want him to be, they wanted him to be born of a virgin woman so that he didn't have Adam's tainted, like, semen in his body.
Yeah.
So that he wouldn't be born a sinner. Like, he's the only, like, the Immaculate Conception. He's the only guy person in the world who's capable of not sinning.
Yeah.
And just how, I don't, like, if that sounds like a reasonable thing to you, I don't know what else to say.
Yeah.
Because it should speak for itself of how far-fetched and nonsensical that is.
Mm-hmm. I was saying in my philosophy, because we did a unit on whether or not God exists. Yeah. And we were talking about the good and evil premise about how, evil, the existence of evil is disproof for God.
The problem.
Yeah, because...
The Odyssey.
Yeah, because, like, God, if he was benevolent and omnipotent, he wouldn't allow evil, etc. I'm sure you know. But I was like, it's kind of like some kind of sick game where it's like you're born, like, in this world where you're, like, bound to sin and you have to try to, like, be good enough to, like, get to heaven. And it's, like, kind of you're doomed from the start. And it's like, if God existed, why would he even create that in the first place?
Right. The whole thing with, the original sin and, like, the guilt and the fear-mongering, it's like a business practice where the church has invented the disease and they're selling the cure for it.
Yeah. And it's the perfect solution. It's just enough where all you have to do is go to church and repent.
Right.
And then you're saved.
All you have to do is give us 10% of your money for the rest of your life and show up a lot and, be part of our club and make sure the world operates the way we want it to operate. And, you're good.
Yeah. You don't have to do much else. Yeah. I mean, people say that think they're a good person just because they go to church every Sunday, but I mean, not a lot of people live that out. And I've seen that with my parents and, my family. It's like some of the things that they do and say, I'm like, you're not a good person.
Right.
But you think that you are just because you're a Christian. Yeah. But I've met tens of hundreds of people who are better people than you who are not Christian.
Right. That thing, oh my goodness, always just makes me so irritated. When people believe that you can only be a good person if you believe in God. That, like, morality is based on God.
Yeah, on religion.
It makes no sense.
Because the only reason you don't sin in quotations, is because you want to go to heaven. Well, maybe the only reason I don't sin is because I just don't do immoral things. because
I don't want to hurt other people.
Yeah, like I have a intrinsic reason behind it.
Right. I can acknowledge that the suffering of others is bad, and that makes me unhappy. And in like a game theoretical way, it'll make bad things happen to me more than likely. If I go around acting like an asshole, it's going to come back and bite me.
I mean, even though I'm not like religious in any sense, I do like the idea of karma as an idea, because it's like you treat people well just because you want that to come back to you and you want to spread goodness, rather than it's like a reward that I'm going to get to go to heaven.
Yeah, it doesn't even need to be like
it doesn't need to be religious at all. Yeah,
religious or like even a punishment. You could just be want to do good things because the world could be a nicer place and it would be nice to live in that world. Yeah, and like karma, I mean, it makes sense in like a general kind of way where like, yeah, obviously most of the time it seems that if you are a really nice person, then people will take notice of that and treat you nicely as well. And if you're just a horrible person, it'll probably go bad for you in the end. But I feel like in the kind of religious karma way, it's obviously not, it doesn't happen all the time. Like not every single horrible person, bad things happen to. There are plenty of horrible people where their life goes amazing forever until they die. So then the religious way to say it all equals out in the end is that, you know, the next life they're treated badly or they went to hell or whatever it is. They got, after they died, they got punished or rewarded for whatever it was they were doing. And that seems like nonsense to me.
Yeah.
But so right now, do you have any sort of spiritual belief? Like, do you believe in anything after death? Or
no, I don't believe in anything after death. I've kind of relaxed because I was very, very hardcore atheist. Like right after I kind of did all that research, I was like, "There's no, proof of anything." But now I'm a little bit more open to questions about like spirituality a little bit. But I also think that mostly manifestation. But I also think that is psychology and the placebo effect. If you manifest, happiness, you're just going to naturally be happier. It's kind of like if you smile, you're going to be happier because it's muscle memory. So I do, most of it is probably psychology, but I have been looking into a little bit more of like journaling and meditating, but I think that's more psychology than like spirituality. So.
Yeah, I think the word manifest is one of those words
buzzword,
where it's like an alert. It's like a red flag to me. It's like, are you speaking like pseudoscientific nonsense right now? And then I gotta like listen and see what they mean by manifest. Because if you're talking like law of attraction, the secret kind of stuff, then I think that's nonsense. But yeah, in the sense that like if you think positive thoughts, you're gonna be more of a positive person. Life's gonna go easier for you because people don't want to be around depressed people. Then it makes sense.
I think spirituality is good for personal practice as far as like journaling and meditation goes, especially like because I don't have access to any kind of like, I don't have insurance, so I don't have access to like therapists or any kind of like medication for mental health problems. So that's been like something that's helping in like personal journey is like kind of taking practices of spirituality without actually believing in like the spirituality of it.
Like meditation is very useful and you don't have to do it thinking any sort of like religious idea or any sort of supernatural idea. You don't have to think of consciousness as being separate from your body to meditate. You can still get all the benefits of it without swallowing any of the fiction.
So all I believe consciousness is brain activity. I mean, all your sight is like reflection of electromagnetic waves. All anything is just your brain's perception of the world. Right. And like when you die, that brain activity stops and your consciousness stops with it. And there's nothing after. That's what I believe right now anyways.
Same. I mean, it makes the most sense out of all the possible theories. Yeah. And it seems like it's got a nice symmetry too. Not that symmetry would make it true, but it is just kind of nice to think about. You come from nothing and you go back to nothing.
Kind of like the dust.
From dust to dust.
Dust you will turn.
Yeah, the Catholic thing that they say, which I don't know why they say that because they don't believe that. Yeah. There's this one movie that I'm forgetting what it's called, but it's on Netflix right now, and it's got Nancy from Stranger Things, and she's a Catholic girl in a Catholic school, and the whole thing of the movie is about like sex.
Oh, I've heard about
like sexual oppression and like her desire but conflict about masturbation, and like she's getting told that that's a sin, but then she like really wants to do it. And they say that like multiple times. It's like they chant, not their chant, but it's like their catchphrase of the Catholic school she goes to. They say whatever.
You were dust, you dust, you return.
Yeah, that. And I kept on thinking the whole time every time they said that. It's like, why are they saying that though? Because they don't like that's the whole thing that people like religious people, especially like the ones who don't believe in evolution, they're like, it's ridiculous to think that we came from rocks. They say stuff like that. Yeah. Not that anybody thinks we came from rocks, but They're like, we didn't come from ooze or slime or like rocks. We came from God.
Yeah.
But then they say from dust you were. Like, they don't believe you came from dust.
I'm pretty sure God created
God,
Adam from dust.
I guess, yeah, they mean in that sense. And then they say to dust you return. And yeah, I guess your body, they mean that.
Mm-hmm.
But they definitely think you don't actually die.
Yeah.
You go on forever in
It's
God's grace.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess the from dust thing, yeah, that might make sense because, yeah, Genesis supposedly.
Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure it was Eve who was created from Adam's rib.
Yeah, and Adam was created from dust and right. Which, okay, then that goes the other way and makes me think, why do these religious people who are like, you don't come from rocks or from ooze, why is that such a ridiculous thing to believe?
Yeah.
If they believe that we came from dust.
Yeah. I remember when I was trying to kind of like justify like Christianity and when I was like going between, I would kind of say like, oh, God created evolution. God was the one who caused evolution to happen. And I think that is some theologists do believe.
Oh yeah, a lot of them seem to try and marry science with religion. It can be done at least a little, but I think like ultimately they are contradictory.
Yeah.
I think to the extent that you are religious, you can't be a scientist, and the extent that you are a scientist, you can't be religious. You can be a religious scientist, but I think whenever like you have to make room for your religion in the science you're doing, you're failing at being a scientist.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
yeah.
If you're a geologist who also believes that the earth is six thousand years old, you're probably a really bad geologist.
And I wonder that because technically Carol is Presbyterian affiliated, but I don't think a lot of the professors are religious at all, because I've had several professors like talk about religion in their classes and they seem to be very much not. So I wonder if that is like, because the school is technically Presbyterian affiliated, but they don't really do a lot of anything.
Yeah, they don't try to actually spread an agenda or anything.
Yeah, they don't really do a lot of anything with it.
I mean, that's good.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't have gone there if they would have.
Yeah. I do see that a lot. Just the other day I was driving and I saw just Lutheran school, and I was thinking, like, why is that allowed?
Yeah.
Why does the government allow schools to be run by whatever religion? It's just like, it's people who have an agenda in what they're trying to teach you, and that agenda is not the same as just education. Yeah. Like it's at least in some categories, it's anti-education. Yeah. They're trying to like get around teaching you certain things. Maybe they don't want to teach you evolution. Maybe they don't want to teach you like
sex education.
Education. It seems like it shouldn't be a thing that schools can be run by religions. Mm-hmm. I feel like we should have separation from church and state, and separation from church and education. As well. For sure.
Yeah, and if you want to give your kids a religious education, you can send them to Sunday school on their own time.
Yeah, just like church, but not like a school that is owned by a church. That doesn't seem right. I mean, I don't really want churches to exist either, but I guess I wouldn't go to the extent
freedom of religion,
right, banning them. But I do think they should be taxed.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah.
I mean, I guess the caveat might be that unless they could like reach the same standards that any other charity could reach, then they can be tax free. Because like if you can prove that you're doing good to the world, like then I guess fine, you are a charity. Mm-hmm. But I feel like a lot of churches wouldn't meet that.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. Pretty sure. I know that my church, like every once in a while, they'd be like, "Oh, this month our donations are going to this," but it's like, what about the other months of the year? Where's the donation going?
Right. Like my church, when I was a kid, we like expanded. We got a huge building and like really nice stuff. And it's like, was this necessary? All that money that your participants were cashing out, like you just got a really nice church building instead of actually helping other people. Doesn't seem like something a good charity should be doing. No. You don't need a building for a charity, to be honest.
You technically don't need a building for a church either. It says in the Bible, Jesus says, right. Make the world your worship, and if you don't have a building, you will worship elsewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, so, okay, we were talking a little about, you mentioned you wrote an essay about motherhood.
Yeah, so I wish that I recalled a lot of its contents more, but I did some sections on how motherhood negatively affects careers, and how men who have children actually get paid more after having children. They end up with a higher average salary, just like by different factors, and then women end up having a lower average salary just due to different factors of how much housework is divided between average couples, how much childcare is divided. It's usually maternity leave. Most places don't. Well, not most. More places are offering paternity leave, but more places offer maternity leave, and there's just certain factors that it's like women more often than not are taking a pay decrease after having children. Really? And it's not like the job is giving them a pay decrease. It's just different factors of how many hours they work. They typically work less hours after having children, and men typically work more or the same hours after having children. And it has partially to do with like society. Men do significantly less housework, and they report doing more housework than they do. Apologize if I'm messing up the statistic, but I think one of the things I cited was that when men were doing housework and childcare, women were doing free time, quote, free time activities about 11 to 15% of the time that the men were doing the house care, meaning that the other percent of the time they were working. And when when the women were taking care of the children and doing housework, men were doing free time activities like 50% of the time, which means that they were working. So the only time the men were doing chores or taking care of children was when their wives were working. And this was only heterosexual couples in this study, but it just shows that men are less willing to help with the family that they created, which causes women to decrease the amount that they work. And it takes not only a toll on their career, but a toll on the marriage, because women are happier in partnerships where chores are equally distributed, and it takes toll on just like mental health. I can like speak from experience, like my mom does everything. She has done everything since we all had kids, and she's very depressed, and their marriage is not good because he doesn't help. I mean, you can see it happen in most families I know, and like my friends, like most men don't really participate in doing a lot of, inside chores. I mean, they're like, oh, I mow the lawn, but...
Do you think there's like a good way to change that at all? Have there been any like experiments in other countries, or like maybe on a community level where
I know that
they do something to fix it?
I know that happiness is reported to have increased after having children in I think it was France, Denmark, and Brazil, and then every other country happiness decreased after having children. But I think most of it, unfortunately, would have to be like cultural change, which is raising your sons to, do their fair share of housework. I think another study that I cited is that girls start doing household chores at an earlier age, and they start doing more. They do more hours of chores just by default of gender bias of parents. And it's kind of, we instill these gender roles in our children before they leave the house, and they kind of, expect to take on those roles as far as chores and like childcare goes. So I think the only way that it could ever be changed is kind of like a cultural shift. And I think I've like been seeing that along a lot with like my peers who are in like relationships, like doing more of their fair share. But I think there's no way that you can legally force people to do more housework. I think it has to be kind of like a cultural responsibility.
So in countries like Brazil and in France, they have a different culture around those things?
Yeah, I didn't cite that study in my paper. I actually just came across it the other day. But yeah, I'd be interested to see like what is the reason why happiness increases after having children in those countries as opposed to everywhere else.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I know at least in France they've got much better like work
government support.
Support, and also things around like work, like you get more vacation days. So you probably have better things around maternity or paternity leave. Probably they care more. They do, like the companies aren't making it harder on you after you have kids. They're probably making it a lot easier on you than other countries are. But yeah, I wonder if the culture of the raising children is a lot different there.
Yeah.
From my experience in France, I don't have any information that I could share because I stayed in a family with two boys. So I couldn't really judge a difference within that family between boys and girls.
Yeah. I mean, I can see it like with my brother, like he doesn't, I know like my sister and I started, watching our siblings and babysitting our siblings, like doing laundry, doing dishes at the age of like 10 at least, like babysitting our siblings. And he is like almost 12 and he doesn't really do anything, much of anything besides clean his room. Wow. And it's like, I just know for a fact that if I was a boy, I wouldn't have been expected to be like a second mom to my sister. Like I pretty much took on like a parental role for her. And it's like, I have a feeling that if I was a boy, I wouldn't have been expected to do that.
I mean, with topics like these, I always wonder a lot about how much it comes down to like the socialization, like culture versus biology. And in this particular circumstance, one thing I'm wondering is if you looked at families when they grow up and when they get married, how they act. So for instance, if you look at families where, like mine, you have 4 boys, no girls. So we can't really, the difference that I observe in who does more housework at an earlier age actually goes based on birth order.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, I look at my youngest brother, and it seems like he doesn't have to do any housework at all compared to what I have to do.
That's definitely a factor as well, yeah.
So then I wonder if you looked at us when we get older and when we're married and, like, between our spouses, like, if that trend would continue Like my youngest brother would
do
less work in his marriage, and I would do more, and my older brothers would do even more than me. So I wonder if there'd be like a one-to-one relationship between childhood raising and adulthood. And then if you looked in families with a girl and a boy, and that would continue there.
No, that definitely is a factor too, because like as the younger children are, arguably I think there are probably studies back up like they don't have as much expected of them.
Yeah,
and
it's more laid back parenting.
Parents are more lenient. Yeah,
it's like they don't have to care
tired.
as much. Yeah, they're tired of this.
It's like those commercials where they're like, "Oh, after your second kid, you like don't care as much."
Yeah, yeah. You no longer like cover all the sharp edges of your counters with that rubber to stop them. You just, if they're gonna smack their head on it, that's fine. They can just go to the hospital or whatever. I'm already in debt. Yeah, so then I wonder, like, if you would look on a family per family basis and you see how what age those kids had started doing housework, if that would be relevant at all to when they get older. So then maybe if like two families have girls and boys and whatever, and they raise them at different ways, if that
there's a lot of control. There's a lot of control.
Yeah, there's a lot of variables happening.
Yeah. I know that the study that I cited about girls starting to do chores at an earlier age, I think they did take like a large sample, so it might have just had
an average of like all people.
It wasn't. I don't think it was controlled for like the amount of girls and boys in the household or like birth order.
Right. And then I would wonder based on biology, because I don't know, I've seen this come up a lot of times where people like to put the larger emphasis on socialization in like culture. And it makes sense because that's something you can much more obviously do something about and change. Whereas like if it is down to like biological factors, it's much harder to change.
Yeah.
And people don't want to take a defeatist attitude on these things. But I do wonder how much of it comes down to just difference in evolutionary history between girls and guys. Because like you think about far back in time, guys, I don't know, even if you're like a caveman or whatever, you just go around and like impregnate a woman and then leave.
Yeah.
From the perspective of like energy cost in raising a child, for like a male, it doesn't require like any energy. And for a female, it's like you have a good chance of dying from doing this thing.
Yeah.
So like there's sad to think, but it seems like an inbuilt like psychology of wanting to make this as cheap as possible if you're a guy. And then you can't avoid the large cost if you're a girl.
Well, that's what's really frustrating is like I do not plan on having children. So if any man would ever try to convince me to, it's like, why would I want to sacrifice all of these, my time, my money, my energy into a family that you want and you're not going to even put that effort into.
Right.
Yeah.
That's, I guess, the biology thing. It's not to say that that's like a good excuse or a reason that we should expect guys to not do anything.
Yeah.
But it would at least mean that it takes a conscious working against your intuitions or your instincts, I guess. Yeah. As a guy, you have to force yourself to put in more effort than your mammalian DNA wants you to.
Well, it's the same thing as like being raised in the patriarchy and like that sort of thing. Like a lot of guys, same way like white people are like sometimes inherently racist. Like men are also like most men are sexist and they have to work to change that,
right? As
opposed to just most men have to work to unlearn things that they.
It's not really like we can just say, oh, just be the way that nature would have you be, because then you're going to be like a murderer and a rapist and all sorts of horrible things. Yeah, I'm just wondering if there's, aside from raising kids a certain way, is there a way to, I guess, emphasize or like reward more widespread like guys putting more effort into raising children? How do you incentivize that?
Yeah, there's no legal way to force someone to pull their weight in a marriage because it's kind of like their personal family, their personal life. Yeah. So I think it's really frustrating, that like it has to be like kind of like taught. You have to like teach your children, teach your sons that like.
I guess education you could do through like
through
schooling.
School.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure didn't they only make girls take home ec in like.
Oh, like in the past or now?
In the past. Not now, but in the past. I'm pretty sure they used to. I'm pretty sure my mom told me in school it was only the girls who took home ec.
So I guess those are the things you could change.
Yes.
And like in your sex ed class, you could talk about that kind of thing. Yeah. Expectations of parenting on both genders rather than just making it about the one, because especially in an early age in sex ed, like when I was in 4th grade, you would split the girls and the guys and you would learn about your own subject because I guess it was too young to learn about female body parts yet. and you just learn about like your own anatomy. But I don't know. I feel like it wouldn't be that weird of a thing to learn about pregnancy and like child raising as well. You wouldn't have to learn about like how female orgasms work in 4th grade. You could wait a year to do that.
Yeah, wait a year
or 2. I don't know. But you could earlier on teach about like child care, child raising.
Well, yeah, I think that would be a viable solution, at least better than not doing anything.
Yeah. So you don't plan on having any kids?
No way. I don't care if I'm too young to say it.
Do you just mean physically having kids, or would you ever adopt?
I would not ever adopt.
Oh.
I know that I wouldn't be a good parent. Because, well, partially because I did basically raise my 2 siblings, and I kind of want to take my own, I kind of like gave up a lot of like my teenage years, like watching after them, and it's just kind of not something I'm interested in, and it kind of sounds selfish. I know people say people who don't have kids are selfish, but I don't really care because it's, the one life that I have, and I kind of want to have disposable income and have my own time, and I just know that I would hate being a parent, and no child deserves a parent that, hates raising them. Do
you have any idea of how much of the happiness that goes down as you have more children, how much that's related to getting poorer and poorer?
I'm sure that is partially part of the reason. I know the study didn't cite that, but they did cite satisfaction with your finances.
Right.
And that went down as well. I think the only thing that went up after having children in this study of women was like their like sense of purpose. Like it gives them like, oh, I'm
something
like a
to live
mom.
For,
yeah. But I'm pretty sure every other factor, including like their satisfaction with their finances, but it definitely has something to do with being poor. I mean, like my parents got extremely poor after having 2 more kids. And it's like, it's always, part of it is like, access to birth control and sex education and that sort of thing that causes people to have, more kids than they expected.
Yeah. That thing, it seems weird nowadays that people are just like, surprise, you got a kid. Like, what, were you not using any form of birth control at all? Like, how does that happen?
No. Today, like,
you can literally walk into a Planned Parenthood and get free condoms.
I've gotten free birth control pills from Planned Parenthood. Like, I don't understand why people don't take advantage of that.
I feel like everyone should be doing that then.
Yeah. But I mean, I guess like I think it's a high percentage of Catholics that actually get abortions because they don't believe in the birth control pill.
There is a whole lot to say there about Catholics
Yep.
and abortions and extramarital child that happen. It's like all the shaming that goes on, and then the mothers kind of get pressured into giving their kids to the Catholic Church because it's like, oh, shame on you, woman! You had sex out of wedlock, and now you have a child. Give it to us. We'll like quote unquote help you, but that's what they wanted because now they have more children in their system, to abuse. Yeah, and also to raise as Catholics. And then they kind of they incentivize, or not incentivize, but secretly incentivize. They make it happen that you're going to have a lot of these unwanted pregnancies and like lack of access to birth control because they teach within the whole system that birth control is unnatural and bad. So it's like this whole cycle of making women have lots of pregnancies, bring all those kids into the Catholic Church, raise them up. They're going to have unwanted births, and it's going to go on and on. You're going to it sustains the machine of keeping like a large Catholic base and keeping a large base for these priests rape boys, which the Catholic Church rapes boys. Yeah. Everyone knows that, but I mean, you're going to do anything about it?
Yeah. I know my parents get pretty upset when I bring that up about the Catholic Church because my mom used to be Catholic, and like it's like, why do you want to brush that? Aren't you ashamed of it? Like, why do you want to brush it under the table?
And I mean, they don't just rape boys; they rape girls too.
But
they rape more boys, it seems. But yeah, so about the money thing, though, it makes me wonder if another partial solution to the problem of happiness going down with more children would be something like universal basic income. Yeah, because then you wouldn't have to necessarily get super poor the more children you have. You would be able to like sustain yourself, and at least, even if your husband isn't helping out as much as you want, you wouldn't still be having to like go into debt and worry about your future and your finances.
No, I think universal basic income is actually a very viable solution for a lot of
things. It seems to solve, or at least come close to solving a lot of problems.
Especially like people who can't afford, like mental, help and that sort of thing. There are a lot of people, especially if you are depressed, because, and that sort of stuff affects your kids also. Yeah. So it's like if you had the money to, help yourself, and then it's like a trickle down effect. People need money. Most of the reason why, yes, people need,
Trickle down effect, that's another red flag. Trickle down economics.
Oh. No, I mean in your life.
Right.
Like, if you...
Right, if you
satisfy one portion of your life...
Others will come into place too. And if you fix your own problems, then the people around you will have less problems because you're not forcing your problems onto them anymore. It's like everything's kind of connected. And you fix little things and it expands. It's like a ripple effect.
Ripple effect.
Do you get free birth control?
So this is a funny story. Once I used to do the free birth control pills from Planned Parenthood, but once my mom found out about it, she made me go and get them from my doctor, which I have to pay money for now, but she wasn't comfortable with me going to Planned Parenthood because they perform abortions, and she didn't want me going there just in case I would have
you
increased
didn't want to familiarize
access
yourself
to,
with where they do
I don't know,
abortions.
it was just I was living at home at the time, so I just complied, and now I pay $20 a month for it instead of getting it for free.
Okay, do you know any thing about the different options for birth control? Like, because there's the ones where you put in your arm. There's like the
a lot. I'm pretty sure there's the implant in your arm and the depot shot, which are more effective than the pills, but they have a lot more side effects. And then you can get the Nuva ring, which you actually stick it up there and you leave it in there for a month, and then you take it out and change it, and it's like has and it has like localized hormones, so it's still like a hormonal thing, but it's not going through your whole body like birth control pill does. It just, it's more localized. Same thing with the IUD, which is just like localized, and then you can get the copper IUD, which is not hormones, but it's just for some reason copper actually kills sperm. It's like spermicide, so if you're not a fan of hormones in your body, you can do the copper IUD instead. And then there's the pill, the patch, which you just stick on your arm.
Like a nicotine patch?
Yeah, you just stick it on your arm, and it just, has, I'm not sure how it works, but it just has hormone. It's another form of hormonal birth control. And I'm pretty sure that's it, aside from condoms and abstinence.
And I guess, Plan B. After the fact birth control. Yeah. So you said one has more side effects. What are the side effects?
Well, they're different for everyone, but I know the implant has been known to make you have your period for 3 weeks at a time. And yeah, that sounds like something.
Wait, 3 weeks every month?
Yeah,
so then you're most of the time you're on your period.
Yeah, for basically.
Why would anyone want that?
Yeah, but the implant. Sometimes I've heard some people say that it works well for them and they don't have that option, but it has a very high rate of, I'm not sure the technical term for it, but just like bleeding all the time. Oh. Yeah, I mean, like the pill is not the worst, but it definitely. Personally, I've experienced a lot of increased like depression and anxiety from it, and it can make you.
Do you know it's from that or just from life in general?
No, I know it is from that because it's like. Sorry if this is like really personal, but it's like the week of my period, I get really depressed and really anxious, and I didn't have that kind of like sync prior to going on the pill. It was more like depression all the time, but it was a lot more. It was a lot more mild as well. So, and then a lot of just like nausea that week as well, and it like makes you, I don't know, kind of, some people can make you gain weight, and a lot of water retention too. Oh, okay. But it's like for some reason the pill has really high rates of increasing depression and anxiety as opposed to any other birth control, which is it mostly just the week of the period or just all the time? For me, but it just depends on, it affects everyone differently, and there's also like so many different brands, and like it really, people say it takes a while to find one that is least effective or least side effects on your body, which is really, it's frustrating because I could be missing some key details of this, but the FDA has shot down most male birth control trials because of the side effects, but the side effects aren't as bad as they are for women, but the reason why a lot of the female birth control trials go through is because the risk of pregnancy is like, it outweighs those side effects according to the FDA, but men don't have that risk of pregnancy. So in order for a drug to pass, the side effects can't outweigh the benefit of avoiding of what you're taking the medication for. How do they calculate that? I wonder. I'm not sure, but I know that for some reason they don't count getting someone pregnant as the risk of pregnancy. They don't weight those the same apparently. Because I know that male birth control trials have been launched, but they've never gone through because they've, there's been like reports of like weight gain and nausea and like similar side effects. It's hormonal, but
is there a case to be made to not do birth control because of these side effects, or not do like the pill or something like that?
I guess it just
and like
depends.
only use condoms because you want to
just,
avoid the hormones.
It depends on how much risk you want to take, I guess, because the pill is 99% effective.
Are condoms not 99% effective?
They're like 70 to 80 because they break. And
who breaks condoms up frequently?
I don't know. They can, poke holes in them.
Yeah,
use
I guess
them wrong.
you can.
People put them on wrong, I guess.
Yeah, you can like tamper with them if you're like, trying to get a girl or trying to get yourself pregnant secretly. You can fuck with the condoms. Yeah, and you can't really do that with the pill, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
and it's also like just ways you can get like pre-cum or like afterwards. It's like the pill is just all the time. You're all protected. It's true, just more safe, I feel like.
And I mean, I guess from the perspective of having the sex, it's less pleasurable with the condom on. So
they say.
Do you? This might be too personal too. I don't know. Do you use like multiple forms of birth control?
No, just the one.
So you don't use condoms?
No.
99% is good enough for you then?
Yeah. I mean, so I wouldn't have a problem getting an abortion. Is the answer to the question. That 1% is not as frightening for me, just because I would have zero qualms with getting an abortion.
Oh, okay. Is that? I guess it probably depends on what stage you get an abortion. Is the actual act of getting an abortion, is that something that can be dangerous to the female?
There are complications that can occur, but in the first trimester they're really safe, and most of them happen in the first trimester. That's why I get really frustrated when people ask me, well, what do you think about third trimester abortions? Like, is it okay to kill a baby at the third trimester? Well, most people don't get, if you don't want to have a child, you're going to have an abortion as soon as you can have access to it. And it's like, I don't know the exact percent, but it's a high 90% of abortions happen within the first trimester, and the only reason that people would get third trimester abortions is if there's a medical complication. There's a medical complication, or the mom's going to die.
Right. I believe I don't remember the exact year. It was either 1990 or 1982, but whatever time Bill Clinton got elected for the first time. I guess that would have been 1982. So he was George H.W. Bush versus Bill Clinton, and Ross Perot or whatever. And George H.W. Bush was part of his campaign, like his commercials were running on like late abortion. It was partial birth abortions was the term, and they were making it out to be like the Clintons are like in favor of abortion at any time, and like, but did you know that partial birth abortions? It's like the day before the pregnancy is going to happen, and
like
the baby's
fear mongering,
right? And they're inflating it to be this thing that happens all the time, and all these crazy girls out are getting these partial birth abortions. And it's like this thing. In 1992, it happened like 7 times. And each time, it's because the doctor's like, if we allow you to give birth to this baby, there's a chance that you're like going to die. So like, we're going to just do an abortion on it. And sorry.
Yeah.
And then George H.W. Bush is like, no, it's happening all the time. They're just having sex frivolously because they want to get these abortions. So I think now in people's brains, partially like it started then. People are thinking these third trimester abortions are happening just all the time when they're really not.
That's just like a really, because I've been like in recent years pretty vocal about how pro-choice I am with my friends and just like on the internet and stuff like that. And
are you having more arguments on the internet with people? Just reverse this time?
I just I don't know if you were on Instagram. Are you?
I just like I had made an Instagram like in 2016 because I was like doing a trip to France, and the people sending me there wanted me to make an Instagram to put, make them look good. So I did that, and then I was like, I'm never gonna use the Instagram account again. And then like just like last week, I was like, I don't know, should I post something on Instagram? And I did. So I guess I kind of am on Instagram
after this.
Anyway, why?
But it's like, I don't know if trend is the right word, but it's like a norm for people to post about social issues they care about, like on their Instagram story or whatever. So like, I know when the whole your health insurance or your work can deny you birth control coverage for religious reasons under claim of religious freedom. Like I did a post about that, just like
religious freedom on the part of
the employer.
Oh, the employer. Okay.
Yeah. So I just like I think every once in a while I'll post a feminist, birth control, pro-choice related issue. So I feel like the majority of people that I know or follow me know where I stand on that. And a lot of people ask me, like, at what point would you cut it off? And it's like, I don't really think that many people are having, second and third trimester abortions just because they don't want to be pregnant. The majority of people are having them in the first trimester. And at that point, it all comes down to bodily autonomy and just the pro-choice aspect of it. And, later, and I mean, they recognize in law when it was for, Roe v. Wade, that the potentiality of life is recognized at a certain point, and that's why third trimester abortions are illegal unless you have it under
medical reason.
Yeah. So I feel like it's kind of like a little gotcha question that a lot of pro-life people ask, and it's kind of irrelevant in a sense, because it's already illegal to have a third trimester abortion unless you have a medical reason.
So yeah, that makes me think of a few questions. What's her name? Amy Coney Barrett?
Oh, yeah.
Are you worried at all about Ruth Bader Ginsburg not, dying and then being replaced by somebody who's more conservative? About that, the possibility of overturning Roe v. Wade?
I don't know, because people have been saying that the right needs abortion to remain a hot topic issue.
They do, yes.
Because
they need those Christian voters.
Yeah, they will lose a lot of their... I know a lot of people, like my great-grandma is a single-issue voter, and it's abortion, and she doesn't look at anything else. And people say that if they lose that would be too detrimental for them. So
it's already difficult for conservatives, for Republicans to win elections nowadays.
Without suppressing voters.
Yeah. And now if you can't suppress voters, or even if you can, but you don't have the abortion thing, how are you going to win?
Yeah. So I don't know. That kind of eased when I thought about that. That kind of eased my conscience a little bit.
Like they
but
wouldn't actually really want to.
Yeah.
They just want to make it look like they're going to forever, and then never do it.
Yeah. Until people are less. I feel like as generation.
What, people catch on, or people will care.
Yeah.
The other way, they won't be pro-life as much.
I'm not sure what percentage of the U.S. actually is pro-life. Do you know?
I have no idea. I mean, my guess, based off not much, would be like 40%.
Yeah, I feel like it's a slight minority.
Yeah, but still probably a large percentage of people.
Yeah.
That's like every Christian almost. Yeah, but that's going downhill too. The amount of Christians in the country and the amount of people who are religious. Yeah, even in just the past couple of years, it's interesting, and especially, or not surprisingly, among young people. Yeah. I think I was just looking at Pew Research polls about how people feel about different religions, like how favorable they look upon whatever religion. And it was millennials right now. I think that the shift that happened over the course of like 2014 to 2018 is that they look at, I think it's Catholics. They like Catholics the least out of all religious groups.
Interesting.
And they like, I think, Buddhists the most. And usually the numbers for Muslims and for atheists are very low. And now they're actually pretty high among millennials anyway. And then among non-millennials, anybody older than that.
They didn't interview anyone younger. It was just millennials and up.
Yeah. I think it was just like two broad brackets. And the older age was like, they look more favorably now upon atheists and Muslims than they used to. So that's gone up. And Catholics are still very, very well regarded amongst older people. But I think Jews are actually the highest. Like the shift, the Catholics went down a little bit, but they're still high up for older people. Yeah, I mean, the actual amount of religious people and people who say they attend church on a weekly basis is going down as well. So.
I'd like to see the amount of senators who are religious go down, because I'm pretty sure it's 100%. Yeah, I don't think there's a single atheist in Congress currently, unless I'm mistaken.
Yeah, I don't know. I know at least that some people don't. I don't know if they wouldn't say they're openly atheist, but they wouldn't actually say they're religious either. Like, I don't think Bernie Sanders or like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez says they're religious.
I'm pretty sure AOC did say she was.
Oh, she did?
Yeah, on like in a tweet, she was saying that her values are, feed the poor, heal the sick,
along with Jesus.
Yeah, okay. Kind of thing. But I remember, I think in my high school AP Gov class, we actually looked at the religions of the House and Senate. I don't think at that point there was not an open atheist.
Right. Yeah, it's funny because the representatives are supposed to represent what people look like, and it's like skews way Catholic and way like Christian.
And way white and
way white and way male. Yeah. And it's like, where are all the atheists? Where are all the Muslim? Where are all the females? Where are all the black people? Where are all the
and poor people? I mean,
where
the
are all the
average
poor people?
yeah,
Right. I mean, I guess that's kind of hard to do.
yeah,
because
nowadays.
on a congressman's salary, it's like as soon as you become a congressman, you're not a poor person
Yeah,
anymore.
and you can't really be elected anymore if you.
Oh,
Don't
definitely,
have,
you can't
yeah.
be elected to begin with. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. The funding to campaign.
Which, yeah, I mean, that's a whole different topic. But that thing, like how we run campaigns and funding for campaigns, like that needs to be completely flipped over and overdone. Like, I don't think you should be able to get donations from citizens.
Yeah.
I think it should probably be a set amount paid for by the government, right? So like everybody's tax money equally that each candidate gets, for people on an even footing, rather than it just being like a money race.
Yeah. I also think that term limits would be a huge benefit to getting like big money and like career politicians out.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
it's difficult because the people who vote on those things are the people who benefit from them.
Right. They're not really serving their constituents. They're just serving themselves. In most cases, anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, generally I would be a fan of not having career politicians either. But then you gotta also acknowledge that like some people are good career politicians. Like Bernie Sanders is a career politician at this point. Yeah. Been one for like 50 years now. And I'm a pretty big fan of him.
Yeah. But you can't have
you can't really base that on just one guy versus all the rest of the guys who are doing it the wrong way.
Exceptions to my premises.
Right. So you can just say, let's have no career politicians, and then if that means
bye Bernie. He can retire. He's
right. So I'd like to know, I mean, I know it's a hard ask, but what is your like argument, I guess, that you would make to a pro-life person about why pro-choice is the more, in your opinion, correct choice?
I tend to stray away from arguments where it's like, oh, it's not even a life, it doesn't have brain activity, because they are coming from a very emotional place, because I do believe that a lot of people genuinely believe that, you know, these fetuses have souls and they have, you know,
about that whole aspect of it.
Especially religious people. Like, I do believe that there are some people who are just, they're not
non-religious,
pro-life, but they are or they're anti-choice. But for people who actually do believe that it's like a life, I don't like using the argument where it's like, oh, it can't feel, it can't think, because I find it to be insensitive, and I try to go more from the bodily autonomy route and the religious freedom route, where it's to you, it has a soul, and that is because of your religion and your attachment to it, but you cannot push that kind of belief onto anyone else. And in the same way that we wouldn't force anyone to, you know, donate an organ to keep someone alive, we wouldn't force anyone to give blood to keep someone alive. You can't force a woman to continue a pregnancy just because you believe that it is keeping someone alive, kind of deal. I find it frustrating that we give dead bodies, like people who didn't consent to be an organ donor, you know, more bodily autonomy than we give women. This is like kind of, it's more of a personal choice, and I don't like using arguments where it's like, oh, it's not a life, it doesn't feel anything, because to them it does, but to me it doesn't, and that's where the choice part comes in. Yeah. And I know it's sometimes you get the pushback where it's like, oh, you're still a murderer, you're still killing something, but I think you can't really argue with the fact that it's like, to me, it's not murder.
I mean, I would wonder about if you're saying bodily autonomy is the main reason. If somebody could say, what about the autonomy of the unborn child? Like, do they have any? Or like, should they have any?
I think that the mother kind of has, you would put the life of a actual living, breathing person over the life of a fetus, just because of it's her body that it's happening to, and it's going on in, and it's also her life that it's going to affect. So I think the autonomy part is, she's kind of in the driver's seat of it, and it's not really, I mean, and then also the consciousness part comes into it as well, but I think still saying that, oh, it's not a life, isn't really going to be a good argument for them, because they still believe that it is a life. Yeah. But I think that the life of the grown woman matters more than the supposed life of the fetus.
Right. I don't know how much you want me to argue with about something that I agree with you on, but...
I don't know. You know, Caden does that all the time. You know, devil's advocate. Yeah. Makes you a better arguer.
Okay. Well, I'll say one more thing then. Okay. It's not really a comparison between the life of the mother and the life of the child, though, because at least in a lot of cases, not all of them, obviously, but a lot of cases, the life of the mother isn't at risk at all. So it's really between the choice of the mother and the life of the child.
Well, you could say that someone who doesn't want to have a child, their life is at risk if they have a child, because if you have a child that you don't want, it's likely going to take a toll on your mental health. If you have a child that you can't afford, it's likely going to take a toll on...
I mean, I'm sure it would still take a toll on your mental health, even if you're just forced to have the child at all, but it's not necessarily that you would have to keep the child. You could give it away for adoption.
That's true, but adoption is
Not that would be good for the child, but I mean.
But adoption is like an alternative to parenthood, and it's not necessarily an alternative to pregnancy, because there's also, long-term effects from pregnancy.
Right.
You can have complications that go on during pregnancy. I mean, like, your body is entirely changed after pregnancy. It's a big, like, it would be traumatic to even give birth to a child that you didn't want, or go through a pregnancy that you didn't want.
Yeah.
I think it's wrong to force someone to do that if they don't want to.
I mean, I agree with you.
Yeah. I don't know. That is something that I do want to work on, is my arguing skills as far as abortion goes, because I get very emotional, especially when I argue with my family, and I want to, present like a level-headed,
Yeah. When it comes to the abortion and like the difference of amount of people, in at least in America, between who are pro-life and who are pro-choice, do you expect the biggest change over time to come from people getting their minds changed, or from generations dying?
Generations dying, I think. Which sounds kind of morbid, but...
Because if that's the case, if like we're just going to become a more pro-choice nation over time just because those ideas will just die out, then I guess you don't necessarily... I mean, you probably should know anyway, but you don't necessarily have to have a good argument. As bad as that sounds. But I just mean
like to.
Yeah, it would be good to. You should have one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like,
well, I just think a lot of especially older religious people are not going to change their minds on abortion.
Yeah, you don't have to like necessarily prepare your arguing skills if you're not really planning on changing individuals' minds about the subject. But I guess you should have a way to defend yourself when the pro-life people come knocking and ask you why.
Yeah, I actually was
come
almost
with torches,
kicked out for being pro-choice.
Kicked out of what?
My house.
Oh, your house. Okay.
Yeah. So I've learned to kind of keep my mouth shut around my family.
Do you think that's a good thing overall too? If you have some sort of conflicting opinion with people who are gonna do something bad to you for it, do you think it's good of someone to not say it, like keep it to themselves? Or do you think you should honestly air your ideas despite whatever bad thing's gonna happen to you because of it?
I guess it depends on the consequences, because as much as I'm passionate about women's rights, I don't really think being homeless is a good trade-off for it. Yeah, okay. So I guess it just depends on risk versus reward. I have had a lot of arguments with my parents about like Black Lives Matter and like systemic racism and homophobia and that sort of thing that they're not as like inflammatory about. So it's just like maybe knowing like the limits of the consequences, because I'll argue with them about that all day. But it's like pro-choice is or abortion is such like a hot topic that my parents or my family in general is not very liking of. I don't know the right word for that, but yeah.
Yeah, a lot of my family members definitely are pro-life. And I wonder, they probably are single issue voters, or at least come close to be. Don't know how many of them voted for Trump, or voted for Trump simply on the basis of Mike Pence's pro-life, and Donald Trump at least pretends to be for the vote. He's definitely not.
Even though he was, I think in an interview he said he was pro-choice prior to running.
Well, yeah. I mean, he probably lied about everything he said. That's ancient history by now. I think nobody cares about Donald Trump anymore. Although you'll see the signs. Especially, I was just driving to Oshkosh.
In Waukesha, they're all over.
Oh, in Waukesha. That's where my family lives. Yeah, I was just driving to like more rural areas. There's still like Trump, like keep America great, or like make America great again. It's like
it's April.
Yeah, you should take that down. Probably you're only just attracting more and more like enemies, not enemies, but neighbors who are giving you weird looks. Although I guess in a place that's rural, everybody agrees with you, I'm sure. And that's another thing with the generational shift over time is more than right and left. It seems like the actual disagreement is between rural and urban.
Mm-hmm. That's why I think more people who are left-leaning or Democrats need to move to rural. Like, it would help a lot with, quote unquote, winning, presidential elections, because if
just by being in
rural
districts.
Well, right now it's with the Electoral College, it's land votes, not necessarily people. So if there was more people who were left-leaning populating those areas, they would be more likely to be blue counties and states. However,
I don't know if that would work in the long run, because it seems to me that the biggest factor on what people think about the world is where they live. Mm-hmm. So if you're a Democratic family that moves into a rural area, perhaps you can hold out for the course of your lifetime and not give in to what your neighbors think and not become one with the flock. Mm-hmm. But over generations, still living in that same area, you're going to blend in with them. You're going to become one of your crowd. Mm-hmm. So because it seems like you move to the city, you become more liberal.
Yeah.
Move to the south, you become more conservative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's true.
Especially, a friend of mine recently was telling me that her parents had moved to North Carolina, and not her parents, her husband's parents, but whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a person.
Yeah.
For the sake of the story. And before they had moved there, they were very, they were still like skewing conservative, but like very reasonable, and like they didn't have very many like political clashes between them.
Mm-hmm.
And then since like 5 years or whatever that they've lived in North Carolina, like she perceives them as completely different people now. Like
Wow.
they've changed their views on a lot of things, like quite drastically, like to fit in with the rest of the people they live with. I don't know. I think like the place probably matters more.
Yeah.
So I think really, I mean, moving would probably be a good thing for the short term, but I think for the long term, it's probably up to just the gravitational pull of cities and the fact that cities seem to just get larger and larger over time.
Yeah.
It's at least making things more liberal, which I don't know overall how much of that is a good thing.
Yeah, I'm not like as much of a fan of the two-party system.
Right.
But it seems like we've been taking a lot of, voting for Biden is like short-term goals, but it's like, when are we going to, push these long-term goals of, taking down the two-party system?
Yeah.
And,
like getting like ranked choice voting.
They're doing that in Rhode Island, I believe.
Yeah, I knew they were doing it in Oregon, Maine, and one of the Dakotas. At least like 3 of the presidential voting districts in like South Dakota were doing it or something. But now Rhode Island too.
Yeah. That's what I wrote my government essay on in English, was ranked choice voting and how it's much more beneficial and just gives more of a accurate picture of what the people want. Yeah,
it's still not perfect. It has problems.
Yeah.
There's a thing that happens with ranked choice voting called center squeeze, where if you've got a continuum of like a political line and you've got somebody on the far left, somebody on the far right, somebody more in the middle, and you've got to rank your votes, you could end up through your rankings actually, and through these like simulated elections that happen, you could actually make the person that you don't want to win.
Oh, really?
So it kind of incentivizes you to forget the person that's in the center.
So
then but it is more likely to not just have the same sort of issues that like first past the post kind of voting has. Did you have any more to say on the topic of abortion at the moment?
Not at the moment, no. But...
Okay, you can always come back to it if you want. But speaking of long-term things and what we should be doing, and that some people I know are kind of upset at Biden instead of voting for him because they don't perceive him doing enough in the world of like climate change, global warming. But I mean, I don't know. I think that's kind of a little bit silly because you're going to vote for somebody else. They weren't going to win, so you could have voted for honestly like Biden or Trump because the majority of people are going to. The sad way of how the voting system works is you can't really you're kind of throwing your vote away
if you don't vote for Biden,
third party.
You're basically voting for Trump.
So it's like you got to choose incremental steps in the right direction over what you would want to be giant steps in the right direction, because that's just not going to happen. You're going to get steps in the wrong direction if you go that path. Yeah. Try to vote Green Party. Green Party's going to get 2% of the vote. So people don't think Biden is like doing enough for like sustainable.
Well, part of that also
industries
need to be putting more of the responsibility on Congress than the president.
Right. People prop up the president as the only important office.
And then they don't vote in any other election besides the presidential election. They don't vote in local, state.
Right. So with the like that you had mentioned before we were doing this podcast that you want to talk about fast fashion and the results it has on the environment.
Yeah, it's kind of I wouldn't say hobby, but it's been an interest that I've been getting into. Started in high school. I watched the documentary The True Cost, and just about how fast fashion, they're making these clothes very cheaply, and then there's also the human rights violations that go along with it too. But focusing on specifically the environment, they're making cheap clothes and they're putting out new clothes. Constantly. Yeah, you're constantly buying new clothes, and it's like I think it is. I don't know the amount, but there's like a lot that go into landfills like every single year. It's just like textile waste is like one of the largest polluters now. So I've been kind of trying to promote kind of like I wouldn't say slow fashion, but like secondhand and like thrifting and that sort of thing, because there's also the constant consumer culture that America has that goes on to it. Like the most sustainable things you have is the stuff you already own. Like you don't need to buy more things. Like you need to, I wouldn't say minimalist, but just making sure you're not buying more than you need. And it's just, Yeah, something that's really like upsetting with our culture is we are not satisfied with enough, especially with clothes. And I've seen like
Yeah, that's something I have trouble understanding.
yeah,
Why
not into
people
fashion.
not really why people need to buy so many clothes all the time, and like
Yeah,
you wear something once and now it's like no, I'm not gonna wear it again for a year. Like,
yeah,
it's mostly you're a fan of either not buying new things or buying secondhand.
yeah. And I also think thrifting is just more fun, and you kind of get like there's like personal
It's like
quote unquote
discovery.
selfish like benefits to it too, where you're the only one who has these kind of clothes, and it's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
it's a new thing, every time you go. And I've been trying to think of ways to kind of promote it because there's only so much that social media can do as far as like promoting social issues. But I think that another like frustrating thing is a lot of sustainable brands that don't underpay their workers, and they're way more expensive, so it's harder for
Yeah.
poor people to afford these sustainable options. And then there's another aspect where it's like, okay, all these people who can't afford it are going thrifting, and then people say you're stealing the clothes from the poor people who need them. And it's kind of like, what is the consumer to do if you can't buy fast fashion and you can't thrift because you're taking away from poor people, but you can't afford these like very expensive sustainable brands? And most people often choose the convenience. They choose
Yeah, people.
the
I
fast
think most
fashion
people's choices about anything are made by convenience over anything
and
else.
instant gratification.
Yeah.
Of how fast the clothes are delivered.
Yeah, I've heard about that before with the thrift stores, and if a bunch of rich people are, or not rich, but like comparatively rich people are
Yeah.
buying from thrift stores, it takes away from poor people who that's a good source of clothing for them. Is that happening, do you think, in terms of just like thrift stores losing stock, so there's like less physically there for poorer people to buy, or is it the sense that like it's like gentrifying thrift stores and like the prices are going up because they recognize that their customers are more
More the latter for
okay.
sure, because thrift stores have an endless
Right.
supply of
Yeah.
clothes.
You would think that
They're
just
constantly getting donations, but it's more people are concerned with, because I've noticed even in the last 2 years, like prices at thrift stores are going way up, and it's because like it's become like an internet trend. It's
Yeah.
popularized by teenagers, and they're recognizing that demand for it, and it could be a problem because where these lower income people who used to thrift out of necessity going to
Right.
get their clothes, because all these middle class teens are thrifting out of fashion needs. And it's kind of
Right.
like, I need to remind myself too, it's like it's still, you need to temper yourself with consuming at thrift stores too, because if you don't need it, you shouldn't buy it, even
Right.
if it is secondhand. And yeah, it's kind of like there's a lot of people who have been like doing like hauls, so they just go in
Yeah.
and they buy everything, and then they
Yeah.
sell it on like Depop and resale stuff for like a huge profit margin, and they just buy these like $5-10 shirts, and then they'll sell them for like $80 because they have some sort of vintage like label on them, and they're making this profit off of them. And it's kind of like gentrifying the thrift stores too.
Yeah. There's a really good episode of the Patriot Act on Netflix about fast fashion. Yeah, they talk about like H&M a lot because that's one of the worst companies about
H&M and Forever 21
it. Yeah,
are like
yeah, those are bad ones. But yeah, you should go watch that if you can. You would think that like if we didn't have like a capitalist system, which is just companies are only motivated by profit, that instead of filling these landfills up with just tons of clothing, that they could just give them to people.
Donate.
Is that like companies just don't donate clothes because now they won't make money off of the next batch of clothes?
I mean, and it's the same thing with food. I mean, they throw out, large amounts of food at the end of the night when they close. I mean, I used to work at Dunkin, and we would just toss all the donuts in the trash. And it's like,
at least there's some sort of like tiny excuse you can make about like it's going to go bad.
Yeah.
But clothes aren't going to go bad. But yeah, I always feel bad about throwing food away. And you throw donuts away? That seems wrong to me. Unrelated note, Dunkin Donuts. I think was it Sweden maybe? Or is it Switzerland?
They have 41 different kinds of vegan donuts,
flavors
and
of
they
vegan
don't have a
donuts.
single one in the U.S.
I don't even understand how a donut shop can have 41 flavors of any donut, not just vegan donuts, but like that seems like a
and they
giant
got
amount of
crazy
donuts.
ones too. They have like peanut butter and jelly, like
right.
peanut sprinkled on top. Like they're not even doing basic ones. They're going crazy.
Like how big is a Dunkin Donuts that can fit 41 vegan and then probably you would think more non-vegan donuts?
Yeah.
Are they making them to order? That seems unlikely.
Does the UK and Europe have a higher percentage of vegans because they always get the really
I know.
good.
They get everything first.
They get the really good food options.
Like Germany is getting lots of stuff all the time, and like the Scandinavian countries, like they have the McVegan, like which is I think that's the name of the sandwich, which is a bad name, but
and they have like vegan mac and cheese at Starbucks and like
mac and cheese at Starbucks.
I know,
that sounds
like a
right.
lot. I've seen like a lot of pizza places that have like vegan cheese.
Oh yeah, like Domino's in Australia has.
And we don't have
anything.
Toppers has vegan cheese.
I know. I have some in my fridge right now, actually.
Yeah, I get it all the time.
Yeah, it's super expensive, but yeah, it's kind of annoying. They must have higher percentages of vegan people, or at least flexitarians who care about buying non-meat things, which is good. Yeah. Okay, so the fast fashion thing, though.
Derailing.
Yeah. Is there like a good place to buy? Because there's certain items of clothing that you can't really thrift for, like underwear.
Yeah. So I have a couple brands that I do for things that are not thriftable. Like there's an activewear brand called Girlfriend Collective, and they do all these different kinds of like leggings, shorts, workout gear, and they make them from recycled water bottles. And they're pretty nice quality, but the problem is they're $80 a pair. So it's kind of... A
pair?
Yeah, of leggings. Yeah.
Wow.
So it's like, it's the investment of like a good quality thing. And it's also, it's an ethical brand, it's a sustainable brand. And then, there's a couple like sustainable like underwear brands that are out there and like swimwear brands, but they're pretty expensive. So I try to keep good care of those kinds of clothes because I don't have the kind of money, but I just can't justify buying. I mean, I do buy things from, Target because I've worked there, and they don't...
Are they not
They don't...
evil?
They're kind of in the middle between, like, fast fashion and, like, a sustainable brand because they definitely aren't... They definitely put out new styles constantly, so they're more of a fast fashion brand, but they don't... They pay their workers well. They don't have a lot of any notable that I found when I was researching, like human rights violations.
They're not like Nike sourcing
and like Zaful
with suicide nets. On the walls.
And Zaful like pays their workers like 5 cents an hour and like stuff like that, and they outsource from India and like sweatshops and that sort of thing.
Right.
So those things, obviously, you can't be an ethical consumer of every single thing ever, and just kind of pick the best option that you can if you can't afford, these crazy expensive sustainable brands. But I don't like people who say, "Oh, there's no ethical consumption under capitalism." Like, why would I even try? Because there's always like
you mean they use that as an excuse to just not care?
And it's like there's always a more ethical option, that you could be choosing, but you just don't want to.
Right, like even if you can't be perfect, you can still try to reduce your part of the problem.
And that's why I tell people about veganism too, and they're like, "Oh, I can't go vegan because I love cheese."
So it's like stop eating meat on Mondays.
Go vegan except for cheese then.
Right.
Like, why can't you just because of that one thing? And it's always an excuse. It's never an effort. But they say that they care about the environment. They say that they care about all these issues.
It's like people are like, "Oh, I can't be vegan because I'm allergic to all these nuts." It's like,
don't eat nuts.
Don't eat nuts, and it's like that doesn't mean you have to only eat meat. Like you could eat lots of other things that you could be as vegan as you can be, or you could be as non-fast fashion supporting as you can be.
Ethical consumer.
Yeah, I try to just never buy clothes. If I can. Obviously, I can't do that because eventually they wear away. I wear my shoes until the soles detach from the shoe. Yeah, and I'm like, I'm not good at sewing, so I guess I'll have to buy new shoes.
That's what I do with phones, because they're not an ethical purchase whatsoever.
Oh, no,
but it's
not.
hard to participate in modern society without them, so I usually wait until the screen is cracked.
Yeah,
and
wait until your phone does not work
and,
anymore.
Yeah,
I just bought a new phone, but I had my previous phone for, I think, 6 years.
Wow.
And... Yeah, it was unusable. Yeah. It was freezing, and it had no storage space left over, so I couldn't. It offloaded all of my apps, even the really basic ones like mail. Mm-hmm. So I couldn't use my phone except for messaging, text. And then when I would try to text, it would freeze.
So you needed a new phone.
So I got a new phone, and I felt bad about it. But I was like, well, I guess I consider it this way: there are people who are buying every new phone, like every year, like the new iPhone. I'm gonna get the new iPhone. And there are people who don't do that. There are also people who are better than me and don't even own a phone.
Yeah, which I always feel guilty about not doing. Because the phone's not good for me either, the amount of time I spend on it.
Yeah, it's bad for your mental health. Yeah, it's bad for the environment. It's bad. It's probably bad for human rights.
Yeah. I mean, if there was a flip phone that had Spotify on it, I could get that.
Yeah. So, we can't be perfect in everything we consume. These pants that I'm wearing, these jeans, I like I didn't know where to buy ethically sourced pants, so I asked Adrienne, my girlfriend, for my birthday this past year, to just buy me some really expensive,
nice durable
like
pants.
like jeans from a ethical company, and I think the company was Everlane.
Oh, I've heard of them. Yeah.
Yeah, so they're like $80 jeans, which I would never buy
haven't
myself.
bought anything off of there because it's so expensive. But
I mean, honestly, for jeans, maybe $80 is the most expensive in the world.
Yeah, that sounds
more expensive than I would want. But.
Sounds like comparable to like American Eagle and like those kinds of fast fashion places, anyways.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess like I own like one pair of jeans at a time, and I wear them until I get holes like in weird places, and then and then I have to buy a new one. But yeah, as far as supporting Target goes, I guess like when I have to buy underwear, then like I go there because I don't know if I can pull off.
Pay like $80 a pair of underwear.
Right. I can't like get 16 pairs of underwear for $20.
Yeah.
I have to pay $200 for that. That's just
well, and Target pays their workers good. I used to work.
I actually worked at Target for a month.
Really? I've been working there for almost a year now. Yeah.
Just only during the summers?
Summers and winter break. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I worked there for a month, and I
didn't like it.
Hated it. I was going through a bad time in my life as well, so it was like I just need to get out of this place.
Yeah. Do you cashier or?
No, it was actually looking back, it seemed like a pretty decent job. I was in the like stock room, the back room.
Oh yeah, that's
and I was just stocking stuff, listening to music and like podcasts.
Yeah, that's fun.
But there was something about biking to work at like 6 a.m. and then like working there all day and just the oppressive red of the whole place. Like, why is it so red? I don't like it. It's just, and I don't know, like the work environment. There's like one guy that like was cool and I'd have conversations with, but then everybody else is like, I don't know if I like you.
There's a lot of old ladies who are very mean who work at my Target. Yeah, so.
And one part of the stockroom job that I really did not like was when we got in shipments every morning, or whatever, of all the cold stuff. So you'd have to spend nobody ever wanted to spend time in the freezer. So it was like never organized. So it was like when you have to put stuff away, it would take extra time to do it because it was not organized. Yeah. So you're spending like an hour in the freezer with this giant coat on, the hat and the mittens that they have. And it's like, I just wanted to like kill myself.
Yeah.
So I quit.
Yeah, I'm thinking about quitting Target this summer because my friend told me about a job at the cheese factory that pays $16.80.
Is the cheese factory the place that's actually a sandwich shop? Or is that actually a factory that makes cheese?
I think there might be a sandwich shop attached to the factory.
So there's cheese though? It is cheese? It's not a misnomer?
I have no clue.
I might be thinking of a different thing. Okay, so.
But it pays $16.80 and then time and a half on weekends, but I don't know if the vegan working at the cheese factory.
Yeah, I was going to ask.
Yeah, I don't know. I might just stick with Target.
Yeah, that's the main reason I work at the job I currently work at is because it mostly aligns with my ethics, working at a vegan restaurant.
Yeah, I enjoy it. I think it's good.
Yeah, it's okay. So, with the fast fashion or the companies that are like sustainably sourced clothing companies, is there any sort of thing you know about, any sort of like third-party investigation of how you can actually be sure these are ethical companies?
I actually do follow a woman on YouTube who that's her job she works for a environmental blog, and she actually like investigates these companies, and a lot of times they will not really, they'll have a lot of, it's like greenwashing basically. Yeah. They'll have a lot of, buzzwords where it's like, oh, net zero emissions, right. Oh, like sustainably sourced, but they don't really clarify. So it's also, tricky as a consumer to even know if you're even consuming sustainable products at all. Yeah. And it's just,
it might all just be lies that they're telling. Like,
yeah.
This is a healthy food product when they're just putting the word healthy on it. Like, well, there's not actually a definition of healthy according to the FDA, so we can just claim that it's healthy and we can get away with it, even though it's totally not. Yeah. You can just be lied to by every single company you support.
And that's why I've noticed a lot of like those brands of like dish soap and like laundry soap that are like packaged to look like they're like super eco-friendly.
Right, they have a duck on it.
Like, yeah, and it's like they're still made of plastic. Like
yeah.
I don't know, there's a lot of greenwash, and I think it's a very niche market because these companies know that consumers who care about the environment are going to pay extra to feel good about it.
So you could just claim that this thing is sustainably sourced and then charge twice as much for it. And if it's not sustainably sourced, it doesn't really matter because no one's going to find out, and now you're just making twice as much money as you otherwise would have.
Yeah.
Great business plan.
Yeah, I mean,
props to you for your evil entrepreneurial instincts.
Exploiting people who care about the environment.
Yeah, because I was watching the not latest, but new Netflix documentary, Seaspiracy.
Oh,
have you watched that?
I've not. I watched Cowspiracy.
Right, it's made by produced by the same person that produced that one. Anyway, in that they do a little bit of investigating things, and like the dolphin safe label that you see on some seafood is supposed to give you the message that there were no dolphins killed or harmed in the catching of these fish. There were no dolphin bycatch. And then he goes to the dolphin safe headquarters and asks them about how can they be sure that it is dolphin safe when dolphins are bycaught a lot statistically. So how can they know that the companies that they put the label on, those companies aren't killing dolphins? And then the guy's like, we really can't be sure because we don't really have anybody that are on the fishing boats that are actually making sure that they're not catching any dolphins or killing them. So we just kind of take their word for it, and it's up to the captains really, and the captain's log, and they could be lying, I guess, but we just trust that they're not. So then the interviewer guy is like, so there's no guarantee that these things are dolphin safe. And at that moment, the guy, the dolphin safe CEO or whatever, realizes that oh, that's not a good look for him. So he's like, oh no, we can totally guarantee that they're dolphin safe. But it's but you just said a minute ago that you can't. So what is it? So it's just these companies, these fishing companies, are paying to get the dolphin safe label because it looks good for the consumers who care about dolphins.
I mean, that's the same thing with free range.
Yeah, free range eggs.
Humanely raised.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a label that they put on that these companies pay extra for because they know the consumers, it looks good, they care, the consumers care enough to prefer to buy free range eggs, but they don't care enough to really care if it is free range after all. Yeah. It's just a bunch of companies passing money along to each other, and consumer is kind of getting screwed, or at least unknowingly participating in awful things that they would they would prefer not to. But
and with the food thing, it's there's an easy solution: is just don't eat fish, and then you won't catch any dolphins. But with the clothing thing, you kind of have to buy clothes, so it's just really disappointing to see these companies taking advantage of people who care about it.
How impractical is it to perhaps make your own clothing or buy clothing from people that made it? Is that just something that not enough people are doing, so it's not really possible? I
feel like it could be on a small scale, doing clothing swaps with your friends instead of buying new clothes, or with your neighbors, and rummage sales.
I guess if it were rummage sales could work, but I guess if it were clothing swaps, that would solve it for the purposes of having new styles and looking fashionable, but it wouldn't solve it from the purpose of your clothes literally deteriorating.
Yeah, because you can't really.
It's not your friend's going to give you their holy underwear and say, hey, enjoy these.
Yeah. Give me your new ones.
Yeah, so you would need someone actually creating clothing themselves.
Yeah, well, that's what, before the Industrial Revolution.
Right.
People used to.
Yeah, that's the annoying thing about the Industrial Revolution is it upped everyone's standard of living so much, but it also just fucked the world up so hard. And then, this is a little bit unrelated to what we were planning on talking about, but I find it interesting. And then right now, we've got all these developed countries who are starting to realize all of the bad effects of the Industrial Revolution over the past 200 years. So we're oh shit, we gotta be carbon neutral and stop polluting and stop mining coal and stop fracking. We got to make electric cars and look out for the environment and make sure that we're gonna revert global warming. But then there's all these developing countries who are but what about our people and our economies? We kind of need to boom like you guys did. So we're expecting them to not have the same industrial revolutions that we had. But if they do have those industrial revolutions, especially with the population sizes they have, they will fuck up the world even harder. If you allow African countries to have the same sort of industrial revolution that America or the UK had, that's global warming nightmare. Yeah. So then somehow you have to convince rich countries to pour their money into poor countries so that they can kind of jump frog or leapfrog and just go straight to sustainable practices and skip all the coal burning and just go right to nuclear energy. And I mean, that's something kind of impossible to convince countries to do. Yeah,
that's interesting though. It's it's what we're learning about in climate science right now. It's in my one of my environmental science classes. We just did a simulation, or we all played a character from the Copenhagen Climate Conference, and that was part of it was these countries asking people for money. If you're going to put these carbon limits on us, we need funding to be able to do that because we can't manage it.
Yeah, you can't limit the countries and say you're not allowed to pollute and then expect them to somehow come up with the technologies without having any money And so either you're dooming them to just continue being poor, which obviously is not ethical,
Yeah.
or you're going to force them to just pollute a shit ton, which isn't ethical either.
Yeah.
So the only ethical thing to do is give away all your money, which no one wants to do.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, so with fast fashion and its destruction on the environment, is that mostly from like a pollution of like clothing, just in like textile waste filling up landfills in the oceans and stuff? Or is there a lot of, because I would imagine there's a lot of like transportation.
A lot of CO2 emissions too.
Right.
From
like in the factories and like having to transport these things all around.
And like shipping, like, yeah, people, like
container
ordering,
ships full of
ordering
sweatshirts.
Online and stuff like that. Yeah, so it's like, it's kind of a double whammy with the waste and the CO2 emissions.
Right.
It's why it's, I'm not sure, I think it's up there in like the top 5 like polluting industries, along with agriculture and transportation industries. Yeah,
and like energy industries. Like you pay your energy bills too. They're always the worst as well. Do you know where these landfills are? Are there like giant ones like the Pacific plastic patch in the Pacific Ocean?
I know that we have been sending a lot of our waste to like other countries, especially like textile waste. Yeah. Which that's what they said in the True Cost. Actually, they were talking about how we send a lot of our waste, especially textile waste, to India, and they've been sending it back, and we do not know.
That's just like a double whammy. Like they don't want it, and now they're gonna just ship it back, which is gonna take another ship.
Yeah,
burning carbon.
Like we are running out of places to go with all this waste, and it goes for every industry too. We're running out of places to put our garbage.
Yeah, turning the world into where Wall-E lived in that movie. Disney Pixar movie where everything is just like skyscrapers of garbage. Yeah, so because I was thinking, like, honestly, from like a consuming standpoint, what's even more ethical, maybe not in the long run, because it's not actually convincing companies to change their ways, because you're not an input, you're not influencing these companies anyway. But if you were like Freegan, where you dumpster dive for all your food, so you don't actually pay for any food.
Yeah.
You just eat, or you go to the grocery store dumpster, and you take all of their eggs and all of their bread that they threw away that day and just eat that. And now you're not even like a participant in the system of food. I mean, that's like, I guess, a good thing, because you're not causing any more harm to the environment or to animals than you otherwise would be, because you're just like taking waste. But then at the same time, you're not actually casting any votes that's noticeable to these companies. You're not spending your money on some alternative
demand for like vegan products.
Yeah, so you're not actually, through those actions, you're not actually changing the world at all. So, like, even if it's in the tiniest way that an individual like spending $1 to buy a vegan donut at Dunkin Donuts instead of a non-vegan donut, like that sends a signal to Dunkin Donuts. We should make more of these and less of the other ones, because more people want these.
There are some people who say you're not a real vegan if you buy from companies that aren't vegan, like support fast food companies, and I disagree with that.
I also disagree with that.
You need to promote that demand and show that there is demand for that.
Yeah, you need to go to Burger King and buy the Impossible Whopper.
Because the only thing that they care about is money.
Right.
Yeah.
But one of the really depressing things that I was thinking about the other day, as I was just listening to a podcast on this, is that Tyson is one of the biggest investors into lab-grown meats and plant-based meats. Because, I mean, it honestly, in a way, it's a good thing, because if they weren't doing that, there's a world where Tyson could perceive lab-grown meat and plant-based meats to be competition, and then they would spend all of their money to stop it, its development, and then make sure it never happens.
Yeah.
So they'd be like lobbying against it, and that would just be really bad. So then in this way, it's good, because now they are helping it come about. But it's also kind of really depressing, because then what it means is that sometime in the future, when lab-grown meat is the norm, it'll be Tyson that's the main company producing it. So they just went from like one of the worst companies in the world, and then now it's like, technically now they're good because they're producing all the lab-grown meat and not creating all the same pollution, all the same animal suffering. But like, what about the past 100 years of them doing all this evil? Like, that's just forgotten. Yeah. In my ideal world, it would be some new company who doesn't have a history of doing awful things that is producing like Beyond Meat themselves doing it, rather than Tyson being in charge.
What do you think about lab-grown meat?
I'm in favor of it. I mean, I don't dislike meat. I like meat a lot. Yeah, I just don't eat it because I don't think it's ethical to. So when lab-grown meat comes about, I think I'll probably be a meat eater again. Yeah. I just, won't eat meat from dead animals.
Yeah. Because I like vegan versions, like vegan chicken, like the Beyond Burgers. Like I do
Yeah.
like the taste of meat. Yeah, I just don't know how I feel about like lab grown
Actual
meat.
meat.
Yeah, I might, because it's like I'm so used to eating the way that I do now. I don't know if I would feel as much of a desire to eat
Yeah, I guess.
actual meat
Yeah.
once.
I might not eat it all that often because it's still like for all the ways that red meat is unhealthy for you, it's still going to have those same things.
Yeah.
Well, not all of them because there's not going to be pumped up with antibiotics.
Yeah.
But it's still going to have the same carcinogen effects and whatnot.
Yeah. So not good for your body.
Yeah. But I think it's definitely just a total win for the world because, like I was saying before, most people are influenced by convenience rather than by ethics or whatever else. So once we get to the place where lab-grown meats taste the same and cost the same as regular meat, why would anyone buy regular meat anymore? Unless you're some traditionalist who, I don't know, really cares about the ancient ways of how we just murder animals. Why not just eat lab-grown meat?
Yeah. I mean, that's how I feel about like the Beyond Meat
or
options.
plant-based meat.
Those options is like they taste relatively similar and
there are times where I go order like a Beyond Meat burger from a restaurant. I'm like,
I
did
get
they
scared.
fuck up my order and give me real meat? Because I don't even remember exactly what it feels like anymore.
So long. Yeah.
But in another way, like the Tyson thing, it's just really sad because I feel like in 20, 30, whatever, however many years it takes for lab-grown meat to really become a legitimate, cheaper alternative, the world is going to be mostly vegan, or at least mostly vegetarian, especially if lab-grown meat comes along with like lab-grown milk and egg and cheese and stuff. Just all the animal-based things are no longer going to require animal suffering. Then the world will mostly be like a vegan world, but it won't be through any actual individual choices that having to do with morality. It won't be through people changing their minds about anything and realizing that they were doing bad things. It'll be just because of convenience and because of cost. So it makes me think like in a total like global way, do people actually become better people? Or does the world just like a small amount of people, like the minority, change things to make it harder for you to be a bad person? And then the rest of the world just stays the same and is ignorant of everything. And the world improves, but not through people's choices.
Are you asking which is better?
No, I'm saying it's just a depressing thing that that's how it happens. Like,
I mean, I'd like to see people be but it's like which is going to happen first? The majority of people accepting veganism as a moral truth, or lab-grown meat becoming?
I 100% think
it's going to be the latter first.
Yes, which I don't know. I mean, it's overall a good thing. I should be celebrating that, but it's also depressing that people don't give a shit about anything. Or much of anything. They give a shit about very few topics.
The amount of people I've told about veganism and then they say, I still like meat though. And I'm like, but I just told you about how it's so terrible. Like I tell you about the ethical impacts, the environmental impacts, the impacts on your health, and you still don't care? Like some people really just don't care.
Yeah. And you can't really argue against someone who's saying, I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
So, I'm a Beyond Meat shareholder. Technically, because I've got like 13 shares or whatever in it. And there was just a vote yesterday for like the direction of the company or so. There was these 3 people up for becoming directors of Beyond Meat. And I was like, who are these people? So I looked them up. One of them was a former executive from Tyson. One of them is a former executive from Yum Foods China, to be exact. And then one of them was one of the financial officers, or maybe even CFO of Twitter. And I was like, I hate all these people. Yeah. So I voted no against these position appointments, which probably is just like a drop in the bucket that doesn't matter. But yeah, so it's like Beyond Meat is probably going to have these people from these other companies who aren't doing good things become part of it. So it's like even if the company itself is an improvement on the world, it's being run by people who don't actually care. Yeah. It's being run by people who are just
for the money.
Yeah, motivated by the profit that they'll make because it's a new up and coming industry. Yeah. And that depresses me.
Yeah, but it's like you still want to support that because of the values that you have.
Right. Yeah. And if you were to be, if you say you're not a vegan unless you only support like fully vegan,
it's just not possible.
Companies.
Yeah. I mean, is your grocery store fully vegan? No. Are you gonna stop buying from your groceries from Walmart or Trader Joe's just because they're not an all vegan grocery store? Yeah. It's already like I don't think it's that hard to be vegan, but it's already like a lifestyle change. Like to the point. I do not think it would be possible to only support vegan companies.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess technically it would be, but you'd probably have a really like limited diet, just egg and like select products.
Yeah, yeah.
Or you'd have to buy a lot of
Farmers
things online
markets,
as well.
yeah.
And then in that way, also with fast fashion, I was thinking about this too. Is it better to say buy from Target that's right next to your house, where the clothing, yeah, it came from China and it's already there. You're not. It came with a whole bundle of other things on a big truck. It's one piece of many going on this truck. So like the environmental impact from the CO2, from like the exhaust burning of that one piece of that one like shirt is very small because it came with a whole load of stuff. Versus you buying online like individual items that have to get shipped directly to your house through your demand of doing that. I could just wonder which ends up being more of a cost on the environment.
Yeah, I'd like to look into that actually because I just realized like buying like that one pair of leggings, that sustainable brand, that's one pair of leggings that has to be shipped all the way to me. Yeah. And
then like with veganism, for instance, is it better to focus on buying local, or is it better to focus for the environment anyway? Is it better to focus on buying local, or better to focus on buying vegan? If has to be a choice made between these two things. For instance,
I think you could do both.
Well, yeah, you could certainly do both, but just like certainly if you're going online shopping for specialty vegan foods that have to be shipped to you, it'd probably be better for the environmental impact to not do that. Yeah. And just go to your local farmer's market instead. And like go without those specialty things that you need to get shipped to you.
I mean, it's nice that last time I was at Walmart, I saw that they have like a bunch of different like the vegan meats and stuff, and like it's like becoming way more popularized to the point where it is like really easy to be vegan, and it's really easy to be like a quote unquote like junk food vegan. Like there's so many different, like even in the last 5 years that I've been vegan, like the amount of products and options, it's like booming.
Since like 2015, it has changed a lot.
Yeah, there was only like one type of vegan cheese that like I could get way back then. But
I'm still upset because at my local grocery store, I keep on seeing that there's the Pick and Save has like these vegan chocolate chip cookie dough that like exists in certain stores, but not anyone I've ever been in. So it's just bad knowing that these things exist, but they don't exist near you. Which
that's how I feel about the vegan donuts.
Yeah, it makes me understand a little bit what people mean when they say they live in a food desert. Yeah, but I still don't understand completely, because even if you live in a so-called food desert, there's still these giant companies like a Walmart that is next to you. Yeah, and Walmart has things that aren't animal products. Yeah, like no matter where you live, they have these things.
Even gas stations have cans of beans and rice.
Yeah, not that everyone wants to just only eat beans and rice, but I don't know. Like I to a certain extent, I get the food desert argument, but I also think it's a bit of an excuse.
No, same. And I've been a little scared to like say that in debates with people, because then I'm instantly classist. But like I've lived like a very frugal lifestyle and still been able to eat vegan. And it's like there's a Walmart everywhere. There's a Walmart in every single town.
Right. They're widespread. And yeah, I guess if you live in a really rural area, your local fast food chains probably aren't going to have the vegan stuff. However, Burger King, every single Burger King location has the Impossible Whopper.
Taco Bell, you get a cheesy bean and rice burrito without cheese, and you add extra beans, and it's like $1. Yeah. And it's like really good.
So yeah, I think like it's the thing, like if you put in enough effort, there's always a way. But I guess there's like a certain amount of, it's like an activation energy that if it's too high, you just don't do it at all.
Yeah, most people. Yeah.
So that's the thing. It has to be made easy enough. With like, if it's the world going vegan or if it's fast fashion, it had like the ethical alternative has to be the easier thing to do, or else people aren't going to do it. At least on a large scale, people aren't going to do it.
Over everything.
Yeah. And that's something I think about like every day. So yeah, I think that's we've been talking for a while, so that's probably a good enough spot to leave it. Talked about an eclectic bunch of things, but that's fine. That's a lot of my podcast, like 2 or 3 topics that we talk about. Yeah. So, do you have any parting words on any of these topics?
Not really, but I appreciate like the opportunity to come on the podcast. Yeah, it's really nice.
Yeah, it's always fun.
I like talking about this kind of stuff. Don't get a lot of opportunities to do it, so. Yeah.
Do you have any book recommendations? Maybe one that you just read, or a favorite book of yours that you think the audience should read?
My favorite book is actually Herland, and I found it at a thrift store in the Apostle Islands, and it's a fantasy book about this group of explorers that stumble upon this all female society, and it's just it's a fantasy book, so it's like there's some fantastical elements to it as well, but it's just like kind of like a societal commentary on if the patriarchy never existed and how society would be run from a matriarchy aspect or like a feminine way of life.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was really interesting, and it's still very like relatable topics to nowadays, even though it was written in like the 50s or the 60s. Oh. It's really good. It has an anonymous author though, so.
Wow. Yeah, well, I hope that's findable.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure that you can find it on like Amazon and stuff like that. Like they've made reprintings of it, so
cool.
It's a good book. I liked it. So
check that book out.
It's pretty short too. It's an easy read.
Nice. All right. Well, thank you for
talking
to me.